3 alien women were given a human billionaire's credit, one maid's choice shocked him. Cassian Ward, the richest human on Linares 5, stood at the edge of his penthouse balcony. Below him, the city shimmered with neon lights and flowing skybridges. 3 moons hovered above the horizon, casting pale silver light over towers that spiraled like living trees. Even after 6 years here, the city still felt strange, almost alive in ways he could not fully understand. Behind him, a soft voice broke the quiet. "Another invitation, Master Ward." Cassian turned. Saren, his personal attendant, held out a small, glowing envelope. Her slender fingers shone faintly with the silver patterns of her species. Her eyes, the color of amber, remained focused downward. She moved with quiet precision, as if every step had been calculated, yet there was an elegance to her that made her presence impossible to ignore. "Let me guess," Cassian said, taking the envelope. "Another gala where everyone pretends they care about me, but they only want the human who made billions." "It's a diplomatic fundraiser," Saren replied softly. "For displaced colonists. The governor insists on human participation." Cassian exhaled and tossed the invitation onto a desk already cluttered with dozens of others. Invitations, requests, appearances, it never stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the weight of the attention, the expectations. "I'm tired of the pretenses, Saren," he admitted. "Everyone wants something from me. My money, my influence, my reputation. Does anyone care about who I am?" "Some may," she said quietly, almost to herself. "But wealth draws attention, regardless of the heart behind it." Cassian laughed without humor. "I would give anything for just one honest interaction. Someone who sees me, not my bank account." He turned his gaze to the city again, the moons casting long shadows across the spires. Then, suddenly, an idea struck him, a bold, reckless thought. But it felt right. "Saren," he said, his voice sharp with excitement, "I want to conduct an experiment." Saren's amber eyes lifted, curiosity flickering. "An experiment, sir?" "Yes. A test of character. I'm going to give 3 women access to my account. 1 week. No rules, no limits, no supervision. I want to see what they do when no one is watching. How they behave when they have everything." Saren froze, her composed expression faltering for the first time in years. "Anne. I am one of these women." "Yes," Cassian said. "You've been here for 3 years. You are intelligent, observant, careful. I want to see what choices you would make. The others, Kaylee's and Neria, have been around me enough. Their intentions are clear. Yours. I do not know." Saren's breath caught, though she did not speak. Her usual calmness felt fragile in the air, like a delicate glass sculpture. "I don't think this is wise," she said softly. "Maybe not," Cassian admitted, retrieving 3 sleek black chips from his vault. "But truth is often discovered through boldness. 1 week will reveal far more than years of observation." He placed a chip on the desk in front of her. 2 more were for Kaylee's and Neria. Both women had shown interest in him, in his life, in everything he owned. Their charm was practiced, their smiles rehearsed. Saren's chip, however, was different, quiet, unobtrusive, but heavy with potential. The first step was done. The experiment had begun. By the next morning, Cassian's console lit up with purchase alerts. Kaylee's wasted no time. Luxurious clothes, rare accessories, high-end restaurants. Neria followed, investing in art, property, and a sleek hover vehicle. Cassian watched with a mixture of amusement and detachment. It was exactly what he expected: indulgence, status, showmanship. But Saren's chip remained silent. Not a single transaction. Cassian found himself checking her card more often than the others, curiosity growing into something unfamiliar. He could not stop thinking about her restraint, her quietness, the mystery she carried in her amber eyes. On the third day, a single alert appeared, a large payment to a medical clinic on the outskirts of the city. Cashin's chest tightened. Saren had never shared personal details, and he had never pried. But suddenly, he felt a deep concern for her, and a strange anticipation of what her choices might reveal. As the sun set, casting silver and violet hues across the city, Cashin realized the experiment was already changing him. It wasn't just about money. It was about trust, integrity, humanity. And he had the distinct feeling that Saren would teach him more than any amount of wealth ever could. The morning light spilled across Cashin Ward's penthouse, painting the room in pale gold. He watched the city awaken, flying transports darting between towers, neon advertisements flickering, and the occasional hover pedestrian gliding across glass bridges. But he barely noticed the beauty. His mind was on Saren and the strange, deliberate restraint she had shown over the past days. Kaylee's and Neria had transformed Cashin's credit alerts into a constant parade of extravagance. Designer garments, rare art, luxurious sky suites, they were living proof that wealth could tempt anyone. Their movements, calculated and flashy, left no doubt that they craved attention as much as they craved pleasure. Every purchase screamed desire for status. Saren, however, had made a single payment, an unusual medical bill. Then silence. No gifts, no indulgence, no social climbing. Cashin's curiosity had grown into fascination. Who was she beneath the layers of poise and silence? The sound of soft footsteps drew his attention. Saren entered, her posture immaculate, her usual composed expression in place. Yet, Cashin noticed the faint tremor in her hands as she set down a data pad with yesterday's financial logs. "Good morning," she said, her voice even. "Everything is accounted for. Your other guests are making excellent use of the cards." Cashin smiled faintly. "I don't doubt it. Kaylee's and Neria have already spent more than some of my competitors make in a year." She inclined her head politely. "Discretion isn't their strong suit." He chuckled, thinking how accurate that was. Then his gaze returned to her. "And you? Why so careful? Why wait for days before making a single transaction?" Saren's amber eyes met his for a fraction of a second, and for the first time, he felt the weight of intelligence behind them. "I do not spend without purpose," she said simply. "There are things in this city, and in my life, that matter more than spectacle." Cashin's mind raced. He had expected restraint. But purpose? That was something else entirely. Something rare. For the rest of the morning, Cashin monitored the transactions closely. Kaylee's and Neria were predictable, indulgent, flashy, almost reckless. But Saren's card had moved again, another payment, and this time it was to a small, unassuming apartment complex in a quiet district far from the city's bright core. Cashin leaned back, staring at the screen. He felt a strange tightness in his chest, a mixture of admiration and curiosity. She had chosen to secure safety and comfort over luxury, practicality over vanity. He tried to imagine the thought process behind her actions. She wasn't seeking favor, nor attention. She wasn't trying to impress him or anyone else. She was thinking beyond herself. Beyond the experiment. Cashin realized he had underestimated her completely. He had assumed she would act like the others, or perhaps refuse to act at all. But her choices carried weight. They had consequences. They revealed a mind that calculated not for status, but for real life. For something meaningful. By mid-afternoon, Cashin couldn't focus on his usual business dealings. He watched Saren move through his penthouse silently, arranging documents, tidying the scattered reports, and yet somehow leaving a sense of calm in her wake. He noticed the precision in her movements, the patience in her gestures, and the way she anticipated his needs before he even realized them. The week was still young, but he knew one thing: when it came to character, Saren had already taught him more than Kaylee's, Neria, or even any of his advisors ever could. As night fell, Cashin stared out at the glowing city again. The 3 moons reflected across the glass towers, and he thought about the quiet woman who had chosen substance over show, meaning over wealth. The experiment had started as a test of others. But he realized now, it was beginning as a test of him too. Could he recognize the true value of someone beyond the allure of charm and spectacle? Could he see her, truly see her, for the first time? The hum of the city below seemed to answer. Sometimes, the greatest lessons came from patience, observation, and the choices that went unseen. The morning sun had barely risen over Lunaris 5 when Cashin Ward's communication panel began to flash red. His eyes, usually calm and calculating, narrowed as he scanned the messages. Stock alerts, urgent reports, and red notifications scrolled faster than he could process. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Rumors were spreading about Evans Tech, his company. Allegations of unsafe experiments. Claims of illegal imports. Competitors whispering about insider deals. The numbers on his screen were plummeting. Cashin felt a surge of controlled fury. Lies. All lies, but dangerous ones that could undo years of work. Saren, he called, his voice sharper than usual. She appeared at the door, carrying his morning drink, calm as ever. But the tension in his tone made her pause. "These started last night," she said softly. "During the gala you didn't attend." Cashin's brow furrowed. "But Kaylee's and Neria were there," she continued. "They spoke at length with Director Mailer of Solari Biotech. They mentioned your supply chain and asked very pointed questions." Cashin's jaw clenched. His rival, Mailer, had been waiting for an opportunity. And now these 2 women, whom he had trusted to be part of the experiment, were acting as his unwitting spies. "How do you know all this?" he asked, his mind racing. Saren's amber eyes met his, calm and precise. "Attendants are invisible. People speak freely around us. I heard everything." Cashin let out a short, bitter laugh. Humans were predators. He was reminded once again that information was power, and underestimating the observer was a mistake. But Saren wasn't done. "There's more," she said. Her voice was quieter now, but every word cut through the room like a blade. "My mother's treatment, it's been delayed. Missing ingredients. The timing coincides with the gala." Cashin felt his heart tighten. His pulse quickened. "Who would," he whispered, connecting the dots too fast. "They're targeting your mother, and us." Saren nodded, her composure perfect despite the gravity of the news. "I believe it's retaliation. Someone saw us together at the gala, and they chose to strike personally." Cashin's mind spun. Corporate sabotage was one thing, but this was personal. They weren't just attacking his company. They were trying to hurt someone he cared about. He grabbed his comm unit and initiated emergency shipments from his Earth reserves, bypassing local channels entirely. "Saren," he said, watching her closely, "they've made a mistake. 2 mistakes, actually. They've threatened someone I care for, and they've forgotten humans evolved as predators." Her lips curved in a small, confident smile. "Then perhaps it's time they learned what humans are capable of when protecting what matters to them." Cashin exhaled, a mixture of admiration and determination swelling inside him. The situation was dangerous. The odds stacked against them. But he didn't flinch. Humans didn't retreat when cornered. They adapted. They struck. The city below pulsed with life, oblivious to the storm building above. Cashin's mind raced through contingency plans, legal maneuvers, and strategic responses. But at the center of it all was a single truth: Saren's mother's safety. And for the first time in years, Cashin felt the old, exhilarating rush, the same adrenaline he had felt when starting his first company, negotiating first deals on Earth, when the world had been wide and dangerous, and every decision mattered. "This is more than a game," he murmured, almost to himself. "This is real. And we will win." Saren placed a reassuring hand on his arm. Her touch was calm, grounding. "We will," she said. "Together." Cashin looked at her then, really looked at her. Her amber eyes held intelligence, courage, and something deeper, a fierce loyalty that could match his own. In that moment, he realized the experiment had already revealed far more than he had anticipated. It wasn't just a test of others' character. It was a test of his own. Could he act decisively, protect the innocent, and outthink enemies who had decades of power? Yes. He could. And he would. The game had shifted. The stakes were higher than ever. And Cashin Ward was ready to show Lunaris, and every opponent, that humans were not to be underestimated. Cashin Ward's penthouse was unusually quiet, the city's neon lights flickering through the glass walls. But inside, a storm of calculations and possibilities churned in his mind. The sabotage, the lies, the delays in Saren's mother's treatment, they were deliberate, coordinated, and malicious. Kaylee's, Neria, and director Mailer had underestimated one crucial thing: humans. Humans didn't back down when cornered. Humans adapted. Humans struck. Cashin straightened his suit, checked the alignment of the room's holographic displays, and entered a series of commands into his secure console. His fingers moved fast, precise, almost artistic. With every tap, he traced the invisible threads of his rival's moves, identifying weaknesses, backdoors, and patterns. "Saren," he said, glancing at her as she approached, "I need your focus. This is more than an experiment now. It's survival and strategy." She nodded, standing beside him, her amber eyes steady. "I'm ready." Hours passed like minutes. Cashin's plan formed: he would confront Mailer directly, but on his terms, not the Lunarians. The conference room at Evans Tech headquarters was chosen carefully, human design, angular and sharp, intentionally contrasting the flowing, organic architecture of Lunaris 5. Every line, every angle, every reflective surface would reinforce human presence and authority. When Mailer arrived, tall and indigo-skinned with the intricate silver patterns of his cast glowing faintly, Cashin stood. A bold statement. In Lunarian culture, standing while others remained seated was aggressive, a challenge. "You've been spreading rumors about my company," Cashin said, his voice calm but carrying undeniable weight. "And interfering with medical shipments intended for patients." Mailer tried to maintain composure, but a flicker of unease passed over his face. I don't understand," he said. Cashin stepped closer, bridging personal space, a predator closing in. "You do. You know exactly what you've done." Then, with a subtle gesture, he activated a visual display of financial records. Shell corporations, stock acquisitions, transaction logs. A cold, methodical proof of his countermeasures. "While you tried to harm me, I quietly purchased 28% of Solari Biotech's shares through discreet channels. Enough to make your board uneasy. Enough to make you reconsider your next move." Mailer's eyes widened. Shock flashed across his features. That's impossible." "No," Cashin replied. "It's exactly how humans respond to threats. We don't wait for permission. We don't follow the rules if the rules cost us our people or our integrity. We adapt. We overcome." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "You threatened someone I care about. That was your first mistake. You underestimated the human spirit. That was your second." Saren stepped forward quietly, her presence reinforcing the moment. Her calm intensity contrasted sharply with the tension in Mailer's eyes. Together, they were a force he had not anticipated. "What do you want?" Mailer asked finally, voice tight. Cashin's answer was deliberate: 3 demands. Retract all false rumors publicly. Release all medical shipments currently held up. Sever all connections with Kaylee's and Neria immediately. "And if I refuse?" Mailer's voice trembled. Then my ownership stake rises to 35%, Cashin said, his tone icy, and your leadership is reviewed by your board. Imagine being the one who loses control after 7 generations of dominance. Mailer's pride crumbled. He had underestimated humans, and humans never forgot. Cashin exhaled, a mixture of relief and triumph flooding him. The immediate threat had been neutralized. But he knew the larger challenges were only beginning. Saren, standing beside him, gave a faint smile, one of quiet confidence. That went well, she said softly. Cashin looked at her, feeling something unfamiliar yet exhilarating. Yes, he murmured. Because humans protect what matters. And some lessons can only be learned through action. For the first time since this experiment began, Cashin felt a sense of clarity. He was no longer testing others. He was testing himself. And humanity had passed, fierce, clever, and unyielding. The city below glowed, oblivious to the quiet victory won in the penthouse above. But Cashin knew it was only the beginning. The press center of Lunaris 5 was buzzing with anticipation. Journalists hovered with recording devices, eager to capture every word from the gala aftermath. Screens flickered with live feeds, and a low hum of conversation filled the air, blending with the distant roar of the city below. Kayleigh and Neria took the stage first. Their matching crimson outfits glimmered under the spotlights, highlighting their reddish-purple skin and carefully applied makeup. They smiled, poised to charm, to manipulate, and to twist the narrative to their favor. Ladies and gentlemen, Kayleigh began, her voice melodic, we are here to raise concerns about Evans Tech and its human owner, Cashin Ward. There have been troubling reports of unsafe practices, mismanaged resources, and unethical experiments. Neria stepped closer, her green eyes flashing. Our intent is only to protect the city's interests. We urge scrutiny of all actions taken by Evans Tech and its leadership. Cashin stood in the back, silent, his tall frame cutting through the press center like a shadow. Beside him, Saren's presence was quiet but commanding. Her amber eyes met his briefly, steady and knowing. Together, they were a silent wall of resolve. The murmurs in the crowd grew. Cameras swiveled. Journalists scribbled notes. Everything seemed to be going according to Kayleigh's and Neria's plan. Then Saren stepped forward. My name is Saren Verne, she said, her voice calm but carrying effortlessly across the room. What you have been told is a lie. A hush fell. Heads turned. Recorders froze. The red glow of panic lit Kayleigh's and Neria's eyes. My mother, Dr. Lyra Verne, is the true creator of the cross-species medical protocol that Solari Biotech claims as their own. She developed it 20 years ago. The legal battle that followed destroyed her health and nearly silenced her research. Cashin moved forward beside her. And these 2 women, he said, gesturing toward Kayleigh's and Neria, were involved in interfering with her treatment and my company, using the very access I granted them for an experiment to gather insider information and sabotage our operations. Shock spread through the crowd. A few journalists whispered, is this true? Saren held up a data crystal, small but radiant. All records of communication, transactions, and collaboration with Director Mailer are here. Every attempt to obstruct my mother's work is documented. Cashin added, his deep voice steady and commanding, humans do not rely on rumor. We rely on proof. And the proof is here. Kayleigh faltered, her rehearsed confidence cracking. Neria's hand trembled as she tried to regain control, but the effect was gone. The audience was no longer on their side. The lies had been exposed. Saren's amber eyes scanned the room. For 20 years, my mother's work has been stolen, misrepresented, and weaponized for personal gain. This week, those same forces attempted to continue that pattern. Today, we end it. A wave of murmurs swept through the press. Cashin watched calmly as reporters began to pivot, cameras now fixed on him and Saren. The story had changed, the narrative was no longer one of scandal, but of truth, courage, and justice. Kaylee's whispered something to Nerea, but their words were lost in the growing storm of questions. Cashin allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. He had not only exposed deceit but had done so with precision, using logic, proof, and human audacity, the very traits that made him formidable. The press center, once a stage for lies, had become a platform for justice. Cashin realized that the experiment he had started as a simple test of character had grown far beyond personal curiosity. It had revealed the strength of human resolve, the courage to stand for truth, and the power of decisive action. Saren stepped closer to him, her presence steady and reassuring. "The experiment is far from over," she whispered, "but you've already proven something important." Cashin's gaze met hers. "That humans protect what matters. That humans see what others overlook." Outside, the city of Linares 5 continued its restless hum, unaware of the storm that had just passed. But within the walls of the press center, a quiet truth had been established: when humanity acted, even in a foreign world, they acted with clarity, courage, and conviction. And Cashin knew this was only the beginning. Weeks had passed since the press conference, and Linares 5 was still buzzing with the fallout. The story of Cashin Ward and Saren Verne had become the talk of the city, and the truth about Dr. Lyra Verne's pioneering research spread across news networks like wildfire. Cashin stood in the sleek conference hall of Evans Tech, the view behind him stretching over the city's glowing towers. Saren remained at his side, calm and composed, but her amber eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. The aftermath had been swift. Solari Biotech, under pressure from legal authorities and public scrutiny, had been forced to acknowledge Dr. Verne as the rightful creator of the cross-species medical protocol. Director Mailer had resigned in disgrace, his empire shaken to its foundation. Kaylee's and Nerea faced serious legal consequences, their schemes fully exposed. Cashin allowed himself a rare, satisfied smile. Humans might be underestimated on Linares 5, but when it came to defending what mattered, their ingenuity and determination were unmatched. Saren placed a hand lightly on his arm. "Your approach, it worked. The city respects direct action." Cashin nodded. "And it saved your mother's treatment. That was always the priority." Moments later, the elevator doors opened, and Dr. Lyra Verne stepped inside. Despite weeks of illness, her presence radiated strength. The long years of struggle had left marks, but her eyes, intelligent, unwavering, still held the spark of discovery. "Cashin," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "I cannot thank you enough. You and Saren, you changed everything." Cashin stepped forward. "No, Dr. Verne. You endured years of injustice. Today, it ends. Your work will finally receive the recognition it deserves. And we'll make sure it reaches the people it was always meant to help." A gentle warmth passed between him and Saren, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. From the first chip in Saren's hand to this moment, their choices had tested character, revealed truth, and built trust that went beyond titles and credits. Later, at the inauguration of the Verne Ward Research Institute, Cashin watched as Dr. Verne addressed a crowd of scientists, politicians, and citizens. The institute was a monument to collaboration, human ingenuity and alien knowledge combined for the betterment of all species. Saren's hand slipped into his, and he felt the subtle warmth of her grip. "You've changed more than just the company," she whispered. "You've changed perceptions. You've changed lives." Cashin smiled, brushing a thumb across her hand. "And you've shown me what true character looks like. Sometimes, the quietest choices carry the greatest weight." The ceremony continued, but Cashin's eyes lingered on Saren. Her calm presence, her courage, and her intellect had not only guided him through the experiment, they had taught him something deeper about humanity. As the evening sky deepened into violet, Cashin and Saren stood together on the balcony, overlooking the city that had tested them, challenged them, and ultimately respected them. The 3 moons shone above, casting silver light over towers and bridges that now symbolized hope and collaboration, rather than intimidation and deceit. This, Saren said softly, is the result of one simple idea: see the truth and act on it. Cashin nodded, feeling the weight of the week's events and the joy of justice finally served. And humans do it differently, he said. We act. We protect. We fight for what matters. Her amber eyes met his, filled with unspoken understanding. In that quiet moment, he realized the full measure of what had been accomplished. Not just victory over deceit, or recognition for Dr. Verne, or the exposure of corruption. But the reminder that human courage and intelligence could face impossible odds and prevail, even in a world that was not their own. The night air carried a sense of finality, yet promise. For Cashin and Saren, this was more than an ending, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where honesty, loyalty, and the human spirit would define the future. 6 months had passed since the Institute's grand opening, and the city of Linares 5 had settled into a new rhythm. The towers glowed softly under the twin moons, their reflection dancing on the river that wound through the alien metropolis. Yet, even amidst the bustling life of the city, Cashin Ward found his attention drawn not to the lights or the commerce, but to the quiet figure standing beside him. Saren Verne. Her silver-patterned skin glimmered under the moonlight, and her amber eyes held a warmth that made his chest tighten. She had been by his side through the experiment, the sabotage, and the exposure of the lies that had threatened everything he valued. Now, she was more than an ally, she was a part of his life he could not imagine living without. Cashin, she said softly, her hand brushing against his. It's been a long journey. He turned to her, smiling. The longest. And the most meaningful. Behind them, the celebrations at the Verne Ward Research Institute continued. Scientists and diplomats mingled, discussing breakthroughs and collaborations. But Cashin and Saren had found a moment of quiet together, away from the crowds, away from the chaos. He reached into his pocket and drew out a small, polished box. Saren's eyes widened, the faintest shimmer of surprise crossing her face. Saren, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, from the first moment I gave you that access chip, I learned more than I expected. About trust. About courage. About honesty. And most of all, about what truly matters. She watched him carefully, heart beating faster. He opened the box to reveal a ring, its stone the color of her amber eyes, catching the soft moonlight. In my world, he continued, we have a tradition of asking directly, of showing commitment openly. I want to honor both our worlds. Saren's fingers trembled slightly as she reached toward him. Saren Verne, he said, kneeling in the human way, will you marry me? For a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. Then, slowly, she extended her hand. Yes, she whispered, a soft smile lighting her face. Cashin slipped the ring onto her finger. She laughed softly, a sound that blended joy, relief, and love, and from somewhere within her pocket, her mother placed a ceremonial chain, binding their hands together in Lunarian tradition. 2 worlds. 1 union. They rose together, feeling the weight of history and the promise of the future. In that simple act, the experiment's lessons crystallized. Humanity's greatest strength was not wealth, nor technology, nor power, but the courage to protect, the wisdom to choose wisely, and the love to bridge worlds. Later, as the city slept beneath the silver moons, Cashin and Saren stood on the balcony, holding their infant daughter. Her pale violet skin carried the faint patterns of her mother, while her bright blue eyes mirrored his own. A perfect union of worlds. She's beautiful, Saren whispered, resting her head against his shoulder. She is, Cashin replied, brushing a thumb across her tiny hand. And she represents everything we've fought for. Truth. Justice. Humanity. The baby stretched her fingers toward the light, reaching for a future neither Cashin nor Saren could fully imagine, yet one they would face together. Cashin smiled down at her, heart swelling. The greatest discoveries, he murmured, aren't always found in laboratories, in wealth, or in strategy. They're found in the courage to act, in the choice to protect what matters, and in the love that binds us across worlds. Saren looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both moons. Then our work is only beginning. Together, the three of them, human, alien, and child, stood on the balcony, a quiet testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the enduring strength of humanity. Above them, the moons cast a silver light over Lunaris 5, promising a future shaped not by power, but by courage, wisdom, and the bonds that transcend species, worlds, and expectations. And in that light, Cassian knew one thing with certainty: humanity's true power was not in what they could build or buy, it was in what they chose to protect, and who they chose to love.